They tell you life peaks in your 20s, that your 30s are for building, and that after 40, you start slowing down. But here's what no one really tells you. Not dramatically, subtly, from the inside. It begins the moment you stop chasing who you were supposed to be and start becoming who you actually are. There's a shift that happens around this age, a psychological turning point. Not everyone experiences it at exactly 40, of course. Some feel it at 38. You wake up one day and realize something simple but powerful. You don't want to prove yourself anymore. You want to be yourself. For the first time in your life, you're not driven by comparison. You're driven by clarity. You stop asking, "How do I look?" and start asking, "How do I feel?" That question changes everything. Psychologists call this stage midlife individuation. Carl Jung talked about it deeply. He said the first half of life is about building the ego, identity, status, roles, survival. The second half of life is about shedding the ego, finding meaning, truth, and inner coherence. Before 40, you're collecting. After 40, you're refining. Before 40, you want more. After 40, you want better. You've lived long enough to see patterns. You've watched relationships begin and end. You've chased goals and reached some of them and felt strangely empty afterward. You've learned that not everything you wanted actually fulfilled you. And that realization is not depressing, it's liberating. Because now you don't live on autopilot anymore. You live with intention. There's another psychological shift that happens too. You stop seeing time as endless, and instead, you start seeing it as precious. When you're young, time feels infinite. You waste it without realizing it. You give it to people who don't deserve it. You spend it chasing validation instead of meaning. But around 40, something changes. You become aware of mortality, not in a fearful way, but in a clarifying way. You stop asking, "What will people think?" and start asking, "Is this how I want to spend my life?" That question rearranges your priorities. Suddenly, you care less about impressing others and more about being at peace with yourself. You don't want approval, you want alignment. Psychologist Erik Erikson described this stage as generativity versus stagnation. It's the moment where people either feel like they're growing and contributing, or they feel stuck and disconnected. The ones who say life begins after 40 are the ones who choose growth. They stop living reactively. They start living consciously. They ask themselves, "What am I still doing that doesn't fit me anymore? What am I holding on to out of fear, not love? What parts of my life feel heavy instead of honest?" And then, slowly, they begin to let go. Not in a dramatic way, not by burning everything down, but by quietly stepping away from what no longer feels true. They leave roles that don't match their soul. They release relationships that drain them. They stop chasing success that costs them their peace. They start choosing themselves, not selfishly, but authentically. And that's when life feels like it finally starts. Because for the first time, you're not living someone else's version of a good life. You're living yours. Another thing changes too. Your relationship with failure. When you're young, failure feels like a verdict, like a label, like proof that you're not enough. But after 40, failure becomes feedback. You've failed enough times to know it doesn't define you. You've lost enough things to know you survive. You've been hurt enough to know you heal. So you stop being afraid of trying again, not recklessly, but wisely. You take smarter risks. You choose deeper dreams. You build things that matter instead of things that impress. You don't need the crowd anymore. You trust your own judgment. There's also a big emotional shift. You become more emotionally selective. You no longer give everyone access to your energy. You understand that peace is not found in pleasing everyone. It's found in protecting what's sacred inside you. So you choose your circle carefully. You choose your work carefully. You choose your battles carefully. You stop reacting to everything. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't listen. You stop trying to be understood by people who don't care to understand. And that's not bitterness. People who say life begins after 40 have usually been through enough pain to stop romanticizing struggle. They don't chase chaos anymore. They chase calm. They don't chase intensity. They chase stability. They don't chase attention. They chase meaning. There's a quiet confidence that develops. Not the loud kind, not the showy kind, the grounded kind, the kind that doesn't need validation to exist. You stop performing your life. You start inhabiting it. You stop trying to be special. You start being real. And real feels better than impressive ever did. Another psychological change happens in your sense of identity. When you're young, your identity is external. Your job, your status, your appearance, your achievements. But after 40, identity becomes internal. Your values, your integrity, your emotional maturity. You start measuring your life not by what you have, but by how you live. Are you honest? Are you kind? Are you present? Are you at peace with who you are when no one is watching? Those questions matter more than any resume ever did. And because of that, life starts to feel deeper, richer, more textured. You enjoy things differently. A quiet morning feels luxurious. A meaningful conversation feels like a gift. A peaceful evening feels like success. You no longer need chaos to feel alive. You need presence. People who realize life begins after 40 often say something like this: I finally stopped running. Running from silence. Running from myself. Running from the truth. And in that stillness, they found something they had been missing all along. Their own voice. Not the voice of fear. Not the voice of ego. The voice of intuition. And once you hear it, you don't unhear it. You start making decisions that are slower but truer. You stop asking, is this impressive? You start asking, is this honest? You stop asking, will this make me look successful? You start asking, will this make me feel whole? That's when life changes. Not because everything becomes easy, but because everything becomes aligned. You're no longer pretending. You're no longer living against yourself. You're finally living with yourself.